Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Assembly Bill 246 will add certain crimes against peace officers and their immediate family to the list of eligible hate crimes prosecution. Specifically, any assassination, rape, or kidnapping or attempts to commit these crimes would be eligible for enhanced penalties against those who wish to harm our law enforcement community. I want to begin by stating that I've been closely monitoring the issues surrounding much-needed reforms to current practices highlighted by actions in Ferguson and in other communities across our nation. I commend stakeholders, including this committee, and particularly some of the members who are tackling these reforms. I look forward to supporting those efforts. The police shooting of innocent men of color is completely unacceptable, and I would argue to this committee, so is the targeting of law enforcement officials. Our Constitution protects freedom of speech, yet it does not protect hate speech. Hate crimes are defended as criminal acts, committed in whole or in part because of the characteristics of the victim. These crimes are indefensible, as is the targeting of our police officers. Our state's cops put their lives on the line daily. As someone whose brother is a cop, our family knows this too well. Our state has seen incidents where cops were targeted in the past. The Dorner case in 2013 is the most brutal example of an individual going after law enforcement. In this case specifically, LAPD and their families targeted for one reason and one reason only. They are cops. Just recently, 2 LAPD officers were targeted in Mr. Jones Sawyer's district. My bill adds an additional tool for the courts to administer penalties for an individual who willfully aims to harm a peace officer. The legal standard is the same for other hate crimes, but unlike current law, in which any crime can be enhanced by the hate crime statutes, AB 246 is limited to only 3 crimes against peace officers and their families: kidnapping, rape, and assassination. I believe we have drafted a carefully thought out bill that aims to offer protections to law enforcement in a narrow list of crimes while meeting the same legal standards for all hate crimes. I'm proud to have the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriff's Association and the Los Angeles Protective League co-sponsor my bill. I'm also proud to have Assemblymember Rudy Salas be a joint author and would offer an opportunity to our witnesses to speak here before you. I respectfully ask for your vote. Joining me here today is Mr. Tim Yarian and John Lovell, representing the Association of LA Deputies Sheriffs and LA Police Protective League.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is John Lovell, and my testimony today is focusing on the support for this bill by the California College and University Police Chiefs Association and the California Narcotic Officers Association. And I will tell you that for both of these organizations, this bill is up close and personal. Christopher Dorner, among his victims, was Keith Lawrence, a university police officer. Another one of his victims was Michael Crane, a member of the California Narcotic Officers Association. His third victim was a family member of an LA police protective, or an LA police officer. Here's the challenge with hate crimes. They are not transactional in nature. The victim is targeted because of who they are or who their family is. And what that means, and not to diminish the seriousness of transactional crimes, but it means that a victim really doesn't have at their disposal a plan to take evasive action and to protect themselves. These just happen. This bill is long overdue, particularly its protection for family members. The gravamen of what Christopher Dorner was doing was killing family members. This is a long overdue bill. We strongly support it, and we commend the author for bringing this forward, and we would respectfully request that the committee let this bill go forward through the process. This is going to be a complex issue that will take work, but let this bill go forward.
Tim Yarian, representing the sponsors of the bill, the Association for Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs and the Los Angeles Police Protective League. I'm also here in support on behalf of the Los Angeles County Deputy Probation Officers and the Riverside Sheriffs Association. Mr. Lovell pretty much took the wind out of my sails with his testimony. Clearly, a person's status simply because they're wearing a badge, or the status because they're a family member to be brutally raped, killed, whatever, is clearly wrong. It shocks your conscience that the men and women in law enforcement who put their lives on the line daily would be targeted like this. This is a very personal bill because of the Christopher Dorner and because of what happened in that situation, that every single member of the associations I represent who wear a badge feel very strongly about. This is personal. They want that protection. Their families, most importantly. This bill covers families, which is not covered under current law. And for that reason, we ask for your support and your aye vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Briefly, Mr. Chairman, members, Ryan Sherman with Los Angeles County Professional Peace Officers, Santa Ana, Long Beach Police Officers Associations, Sacramento Deputy Sheriff Association, and California Fraternal Order of Police, all in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition? You tell Sandy to tell.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Micah Doctoroff on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union of California. I'm here to respectfully oppose this bill. This is no doubt a serious matter. However, we feel that there are already ample felony laws to address this problem, namely for murder of a peace officer is already punishable by death or life in prison without the possibility of parole. There are also other ample felony laws to address this issue. Secondarily, we feel that in the context of the hate crime statute, assassination of a peace officer and the other crimes named do not belong. The hate crime statute defines hate crime as a criminal act committed against a victim because of the actual or perceived characteristics of that victim. And included on that list of actual or perceived characteristics are race or ethnicity, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, disability, and religion. Amongst those characteristics, assassination of a peace officer does not belong in that context, so we must respectfully oppose the bill.
Morning, members of the committee. Thank you. Jesse Stout for Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. Echo my colleagues' comments that the hate crime statutes, more aptly called bias crimes that California created originally in 1978, have to do with innate characteristics like age or gender or sexuality, and not one's profession. That the statutes were originally designed in a consistent fashion to provide additional punishment for targeting someone based on conditions that existed as an innate result of their birth and not based on the particular work that they do. We certainly respect the work of police officers, and we want to additionally acknowledge that there are already additional crimes, punishments, and enhancements for crimes committed against police officers, including violent crimes. That there's already additional fines and imprisonment for assaulting a police officer with a deadly weapon, murdering a police officer, that all have their own additional enhancements that already exist, and that this law would be essentially cumulative and unnecessary. Thank you.
All right. Other witnesses in opposition?
Good morning, Assembly members. David Bouchot, also with Legal Services for Prisoners with Children. And I echo my colleague's sentiment that such crimes against police officers...
Just name and organization and position.
Oh, sorry. Legal Services for Prisoners with Children.
Thank you.
And opposite.
All right, then. So we've heard from witnesses. Assemblymember Gonzalez.
First, I want to thank you for bringing this bill. I understand the opposition's concern. I think of those categories as unique statuses. And I think in our society, the voluntary decision to put your life on the line so that we can be safe makes our democracy work. And the fact that police officers every day go out there knowing that they can be the target just based on their profession in a way that, except maybe the military, nobody can understand, puts them in a unique position, and one which we as a society and as a state need to recognize. There was a gentleman in my district, Jeremy Henwood, who was an officer for 4 years and had just returned from a year in Afghanistan and sat in his patrol car near 3 blocks from my house. And a car pulled up and he was assassinated purely based on the fact that he was a police officer. Later, we saw footage of just an hour beforehand that he was in the McDonald's purchasing cookies for a young kid who didn't have enough money to buy that. The police serve a very special place in our society, and I'm the first one to stand up when they do things that are wrong, that target other individuals within our community. But I think that there needs to be balance, and we need to recognize that those who are willing to put their life on the line, that they deserve a special status. So I'm excited that you brought this bill forward. I will disclose, of course, the family protections are important and unique to me. I do have a son whose father is a CHP officer, and nobody can quite understand the type of terror that is created when there is somebody on the loose in your town who is killing the family members of peace officers, and that is a unique position of this bill. So thank you for bringing it forward. I think it's an important bill, and I'm proud to support it and would like to make the motion to support it.
All right, motion by Member Gonzalez. Is there a second?
I'd like to second, but I'd also like to make a
Sure,
comment
absolutely. Second by Assemblymember Lackey.
One of the things that I think is important in this consideration is not only the peace officer, but those associated with the peace officer being targeted because of this chosen profession. And I would ask the author to even consider raising the standard that exists with other hate crimes, including non-live-in fiancés, boyfriends, or girlfriends. Right now it says domestic partner or spouse, and I would like to extend it, at least consideration, to others who have that kind of relationship. But I have great appreciation for the recognition of the fact that, fortunately, it's not all that common, but when it does happen, it's a complete tragedy that someone has been targeted because of their profession, and that profession actually being committed to risk their own lives, ironically, to protect the rights and the privileges of those in this great country. So I appreciate and thank you for bringing this forward. I'm clearly in support of this and would hope that you might consider extending that.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And just to quickly respond, your concerns and your request to broaden are not the first time I'm hearing it, and I've heard that on numerous occasions now. So I'm very open to having that dialogue with all stakeholders, members of this committee, as this bill hopefully has the opportunity to move forward. So absolutely. Thank you.
All right, other comments? Assemblymember Lowe.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Assemblymember Hernandez. Might you be able to address the provisions that might address retired officers?
Thank you, Assemblymember Lowe. Today, under law, a police officer is one that is active, retired, do not have the umbrella of recognition as being an active officer, so this bill speaks to active police officers. But there as well, I am open to the discussion and the consideration with stakeholders and members of the legislature to fully consider whether that's in the best interest of this legislation. Clearly, at the end of the day, we want the legislation to make it to the governor's desk, and we want the piece of legislation that's most viable in making it there. But I'm open to it, and I'll work with everybody who is desirous of having that conversation to get us there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones-Sawyer.
Excuse me. And I want to thank you, too, for bringing this forward. And actually, I want to kind of apologize to you, too, because I said I would get back to you last night. Probably Ms. Gonzalez and I talked about these issues till about 11:30 last night, debating a lot of different issues. This is probably one of them. So this is how serious this is to us and everybody here. I think you've kind of reached your Archimedes, your kind of Eureka, I found it moment. I think you've hit the tip of the iceberg of what we're trying to get to. And I'm going to come at it from a different way. Not only am I very familiar with what happened in my district, but I'm also very familiar with what Christopher Dornan was doing. Not only was he targeting police officers, but he was targeting 2 officers that sat where you're sitting now and testified in front of this committee. And they were targeted because he sat on the committee that fired him. And he later was working in Watts. He and his wife, a biracial couple, were working in Watts to change Watts dramatically and make it a safer and better place and putting their lives on the line. And so just to protect them, the community came out. And so I know the community believes in this. They believe in these officers. Now, when I said you probably reached that eureka moment, this morning, whether it's an epiphany or the coffee, I don't know what it was, I thought about not only police officers, what category, and this may be the bureaucrat in me, what category does this go into? And I think this is where some of the angst comes. Is this a hate crime, or have you come up with something? I read in the analysis they said something about bias crimes as opposed to using the word hate crimes and whether or not it fits in this. And so I also thought about the meter officer or the traffic officer that gets into an argument. Think about the TSA officers that have been killed because of their profession. People who come back from the military, as was mentioned earlier, for the older people, the Vietnam era, when they would get harassed and beaten. You know, postal people, the whole term what postal came from is from actions that happened in the post office. There was a time where tax collectors were abused and shot and killed. What about firefighters? And quite frankly, people who don't like what's going on in Washington. What about politicians? And you talked to Gabby Gifford. She was shot and almost killed because of what she believed in, and she was working for the public. And so what I would like to ask, is there a way that we can come up or somewhere we can wordsmith some kind of category that may ultimately fit in the hate crimes, like we have gender and race and everything else, but for lack of a better word, your profession or who you are, because this is about your characteristic and who you are. What about if we were to hold this and really work out where does this belong? And he's shaking his head, so I may be getting somewhere. So where we can put this in the right category so we could smoothly move through, but we also don't leave out other things that we should incorporate in that. Because I remember when that Christopher Dorner thing was happening, and he was bound and determined to kill that officer's family.
Absolutely.
Okay, not just him and his wife, but his family. Mm-hmm. And that is, and wherever he is now, he's hopefully in the deepest, darkest hell you could ever be for trying to go after a police officer. So I'm with you on that. I just want to make sure, and if you come to that eureka moment where we could put this somewhere where it could be permanently in here, and then you can also help other people who are doing what we call God's work, public safety officers, public officers, all of them, where we can protect them all, not just police officers. I would love to do that with you, and that would be my only to try to work that out.
Thank you, Assemblymember Jones Sawyer. I will admit that, as I've noted a little bit earlier, this bill has sparked off a discourse that speaks right to the points that you've made here today about other groups that provide service to the public, that put themselves on the front line of really carrying out the tenets that are part of our social contract. Democracy says that we have rule of law and that we have elected representation, and then through that we have this, the laws that are left, and then we have a group of people that say, because of their innate caretaker person in them, those that go off to the military, those that go into public service, whether it's an elected or law enforcement, it's innate in them to serve and to protect, to be caretakers. This is an issue now that is broadening because of this. At least for me personally, in my office, many have asked how we can broaden the discourse here and maybe revisit. The opposition has pointed out concerns. They pointed out the concern and the attention to the felonies already being there. But the felony charge to the assassination and killing of a police officer does not protect family members. We need to revisit that. They talked about innateness. And, well, I was born Catholic. I could decide tomorrow not to be Catholic. So religion is not innate. But so there are areas that are imperfect in all of the world that we walk through here, but we are trying to provide greater protection to those that put themselves in the front line of protecting our social contract, our communities, our public, our democracy. And that's why I'm here before you today to ask for your support in moving this piece of legislation forward. I think it speaks to defending not just those that put that on the front line, their family members, and ultimately our communities, our society that we agree to in this social contract, that it works and it's working for us. And so I'll use that as my close.
Thank you very much. Then I will make my recommendation. So first of all, I agree with most of what was said up here, both in support and opposition, with Member Gonzalez, with Member Jones-Sawyer. My concern about this bill is I don't think it has the right approach to protecting the families, to protecting officers against rape and kidnapping. The hate crime only gives you an enhancement of 1 to 3 years. And it is going to be difficult, even in the Dormer case, was he against all police officers or specifically going against simply the officers who he felt had caused him to be fired? And I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that would certainly be mentioned in court. Whereas if we had a bill which specifically said, as current law does, you kill a police officer in the line of duty, that's the death penalty. I don't know what the right penalty additional penalty would be for rape or kidnap of an officer or an officer's family, but I think that that's something that we should very much think about, and I think that is a better mechanism than the hate crime mechanism. Remember, for the hate crime, that is a question not so much of hate as his bias. You can hate a particular officer and kill them. The question is, do you hate all officers? So that's my reason for not liking this approach. And if the bill does not go forward today, I would ask you very much to bring it back and that we could then further look at the bill and come up with a different approach other than the hate crime approach. And again, the hate crime approach is only 1 to 3 years. I don't know that that's an adequate deterrent. So, and that's the concern I have. So for that reason, I am recommending a no, because I respect the officers and their families as much as anyone does. I simply think there's a better approach to doing this. No, you've closed. We're going to now start. We'll call the roll.
Quirk?
Aye.
Quirk, aye.
I thought you were no.
I'm sorry. Shoot. You know, you're such a good friend that I couldn't help it. And, you know, I just love you so much, Roger.
You innately want to be there.
Quirk, no.
Quirk, no. Melendez? Gonzalez? Gonzalez, aye. Jones-Sawyer? Jones-Sawyer not voting. Lackey?
Aye.
Lackey, aye. Lowe?
Aye.
Lowe, aye. Santiago? Santiago, aye. Bill's out.
All right, congratulations. It is out, but I hope you consider what I've said, and best of luck to you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I just want to quickly acknowledge the presence of my joint author, Mr. Rudy Salas, I'm proud to have him as a co-author. He's been working very hard on the same issue, and we will work together to advance the concerns that you've raised here today. Thank you.
Thank you. The rest of the bills are by committee members. Committee member Jones-Sawyer, please go ahead with your bills.